Hey, it's Kate, and you're watching and listening to the CMO Show, and I've got David Fossas with me today. He's the CMO of Restore Hyper Wellness, and I'm super excited for you to listen in and learn about him and his amazing franchise. Hey, it's Kate, and you're watching and listening to the CMO Show with Kate Gunning, and I've got a special friend with me today. He is David Fossas, and he's the CMO of Restore, and it's very near and dear to me because it's a place that I really love, and I'm so grateful that I've gotten to spend lots of fun time with him in the store, of which you will hear more, but I've never had the chance to sit down with him and really get to know him personally, so I'm super excited for that. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you here, and you blend in just well.
Oh, thanks. I wore my CMO black.
Yeah, your CMO black. I wore my CMO black too.
Yep.
Can't decide if I look like a New Yorker or what I'm doing today, but it's okay.
Very creative and stylish.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you're the CMO of Restore.
I am.
Can you tell our listeners what Restore is in case they don't know?
Sure. So Restore Hyper Wellness is the leading provider of proactive health and wellness services in a retail environment. We now have over 200 locations nationally in about 40 states. We do things like IV drips, cryotherapy, mild hyperbaric oxygen, and a lot of other great kind of modalities that help you feel your best so you can do more of what you love.
Yeah. Help you feel your best after you get through the freak out part of going to a cryo chamber and freezing your ass off.
That's right. But we have created an environment that's very social and transparent and fun. And a lot of what we do is very community oriented. So we actually design and manufacture our own cryotherapy chambers, depending on the studio that you go to. That's a 2-person chamber or a 4-person chamber. So you can go in actually with your friends.
Yes.
And you can pick a song out of the playlist and bounce around a little bit while you're freezing, and and you can do IV drips and as couples or as friends. And there's a lot of stuff that we do that it is kind of just makes it much more social and fun.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. I danced my way through my first one, and my sister was with me inside. My son was outside videoing me. Your wife, Courtney, who's one of your business partners, was standing out there. Everybody was like, you got this. Definitely felt like a community thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk all about the growth of Restore, because since you've been CMO, which I think is 3 years.
3 years,
right?
That's right.
The growth's been insane. And you love it so much that you just opened your very own store, and I want to hear more about that too. So can you start by just sharing about the growth that you've seen at the company and why you think that that's been so significant?
Yeah, sure. So we came into 2020 with, I want to say it was about 29 locations. And we finished, we actually just opened our 200th location. So we've grown tremendously across the country from a retail growth perspective. From a revenue perspective, we grew from 13 million to 135 million in system-wide sales during that time period.
In 3 years.
In 3 years.
During COVID,
yeah. And I started, my first day was March 2nd of 2020.
Ooh.
And so the best time ever to start at a retail company, but it was also really validating that I came in at the right time to help our country to the extent that we could serve our communities and help them keep their immune systems up and get more proactive and preventative about their health.
Yeah. So crazy. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
It's been just about 3 years then.
Just about 3 years.
Awesome. And you have an interesting franchise model at Restore.
Yeah.
How did that, was it always like that? And was that part of the real, or I guess, was it a strategic pillar for the growth and expansion? Because I think it's a really cool model.
Yeah, it is a strategic pillar of how we were going to grow. And so I'll take it kind of back to our mission. Our mission is to make hyper wellness more accessible and affordable for everyone so our customers can feel their best and do more of what they love. So hyper wellness is essentially a term that we created. We've trademarked it. And we think of ourselves as creating a new category of healthcare that is proactive and preventative in the same way that Uber and Lyft created a new category of transportation, Airbnb and Vrbo created a new category of transportation. We're creating a more consumer-centric, direct-to-consumer approach to health and wellness. And a lot of what we do, these modalities that we offer, have been available to professional athletes and the wealthy for years, if not decades. And what we're trying to do is make it more available for the average consumer at better price points. And so how do we get there? We have to make it accessible, which means we have to have our locations all around the country.
Yep.
And that also gives us buying power to lower the cost of supplies and ultimately provide that to the end consumer. And so, and this was a little bit before my time when they decided to start franchising. They had opened, I think, 5 or 6 corporate locations and decided to go the franchising route because rather than having to raise the money themselves as the kind of co-founders, and a lot, it can be capital intensive to open these locations.
Yes.
They can, spread that opportunity and invite entrepreneurs that believe in the mission and actually be able to grow faster. And that's been a lot of what the driving forces of that has been. And
how do you decide to start your own? Because there's a totally difference between being CMO and then thinking like, I actually think I'm going to make one myself.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I fell in love with the concept and I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. I've worked with global brands when I was on the agency side. I worked with brands like Verizon and HP and things like that. But in-house, I've been at kind of growth stage companies, and whether that was on the agency side, it was growth stage agencies, kind of challenger agencies. And then on the brand side has also been kind of growth stage or now startups. Restore was kind of my first startup. And so I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I fell in love with what we do at Restore. My first year at the company, I was not only just the CMO, but I also ran all the corporate locations.
Oh, wow.
So I got a lot of operational experience. I spent a lot of time in the studios, engaging with clients, seeing how our staff kind of engage with the clients and seeing, frankly, the kind of results that we provide to our clients. And I fell in love with it. And so my wife, Courtney, kind of comes from a pharma sales background and a customer experience background at Stitch Fix. And I come from a sales and marketing background. So I felt like combined, we had the skill set to go and open our own studios and then eventually kind of find the right partners to come in with it.
That's so great. You're eating your own cooking.
I am drinking my own champagne.
That's right. Drinking. That sounds better than eating your own cooking.
Dripping my own IV.
Dripping your own IV, eating your own, drinking your own champagne. Yeah. That's the lesson that Gordon Bowen. So I worked at McGarry Bowen at the very beginning of my career. Yeah. Dawn of my day. And that's one of the first things he taught me was like, agency people lose pitches because they show up wearing the competitors' clothes or driving the competitors' cars or whatever it may be. Yeah, don't do that. Computers. Yeah, exactly. He's like, don't do that. I'm like, okay, that's good. So I'm going to be the number one fan for all of my brands. I got it. I've noted. Yep. Okay. So I did not know that you started or that you did work in agencies. That's cool. We like to talk to our guests about the difference between building in-house teams and hiring agency support and how you think about that. Yep. Can you share? And I love getting the point of view, especially from people who are client side and who were agency side, because I think it's just like a totally unique point of view.
Yeah. So I'll go back to, my agency side experience. One of the reasons I ultimately decided to go brand side is that I had this understanding that there was only so much I could influence my client being on the outside.
Yes.
I could be a good strategic partner. I could understand their business really well, but in the end, I couldn't be in the room to influence certain decisions. And I ultimately decided that I did want to go be a CMO. So those were the two kind of biggest contributing factors. And so now that I've been on the brand side, I can see how it is difficult to run a marketing organization if you don't have a core group of marketers that know your business inside and out and breathe it inside and out. Agencies, it's part of the business model, but they have to spread their people across multiple accounts to make the financial model work, right? And so that means you only get part of some people's time versus all of some people's time and mind share and passion. And so when I look at building a marketing team, I look at some kind of strategic roles that need to be in-house. You're kind of head of brand, some at least kind of SWAT creative team that's both conceptual and production oriented. And then a couple of kind of other key roles. And then it also depends on your budget, right? If you need to scale quickly or start managing larger budgets, doing larger campaigns, you ultimately have to start, partnering with some outside agencies. And I've tried to find the right balance between kind of, giving my teams in-house the kind of strategic and creative ability to go do award-winning work, right? So that they feel inspired by what they're doing. And then it's not just the agencies that get to do all the fun stuff, right? And then can
you make me this collateral, please?
Yeah, it's like, go do this menu. We're going to hire an agency to go do the big campaign. Yeah. That doesn't feel great. So I try to, push my internal teams to be conceptual and get to do some of that, award-winning type of work. While still partnering with the right agencies that are invested in the brand and passionate about what we're doing. Yeah,
that's great. So at Restore, when you're getting an IV, one of my favorite things is the ingredient menu on the wall, and it sits across from the chair that I usually sit in. Yeah. And so as the ingredients are going into my body, I'm like reading it and thinking about, I'm getting all that good stuff. Yeah. Who came up with that idea?
My team did.
Your in-house team.
Our in-house team.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So we did all the retail experience. When I joined the company, you could basically tell the vintage of the studio based on the design.
Oh, okay.
And so, studios that were built in 2019 looked a certain way, 2020 looked a certain way, and it wasn't cohesive. And one of the challenges that we set out to solve was in creating this new category, maybe 1%, if that, of the population know what we do, know that there's IV drips and cryo and these other things available to them. And so we wanted to create a consistent experience across all of our studios that's actually somewhat educational. So you walk into our studio, you see the front desk, and right behind it is our 3 core values. Mm-hmm. So we're reinforcing to some extent kind of what our mission is and how we execute on that through our 3 core values. In our open compression area, you'll see a big dial with our 9 elements of hyper wellness. That's something that we came up with, which are essentially habits that you need to build inside and outside of Restore to maintain your health. These are things like nourishment, hydration, cold, heat, light, rest, connection. And so these are all things that, we had a level of self-awareness that Restore isn't going to solve all your problems. You've got to build the right habits outside of Restore and then inside of Restore. And so we kind of designed that in a way as like a sales and consultation aid. Mm-hmm. And then you go into the IV drip room, and we wanted to highlight some of the key micronutrients and ingredients that you can get into an IV drip. And we came up with this idea of the periodic table of elements. And so we try to create this educational experience that then, you can go any studio around the country and get the same experience.
That's awesome. And I think your body actually really starts to crave that stuff once it gets it. Like I'm sitting here thinking like, I want to go get my IV. Yeah. It feels so good to have it. Your body loves it.
Yeah, it does. For me, it's red light and cryo. I mean, I love my IV drips, and I'll do one at least once a month. Yeah. But for me, as a runner, and I've started kind of getting back into lifting and stuff like that, I notice it. My knees notice it if I'm not coming in on a regular basis to do red light and cryo.
How often do you do it?
I try to do it 2 to 3 times a week.
Okay.
And especially if I'm, getting into my longer runs,
yes.
I had gotten into a really good rhythm of doing 10 miles every Saturday or Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so to kind of maintain my knees and my energy and all that stuff, I was doing red light and cryo, 2 to 3 times a week.
That's awesome.
And then as the world is, like you get really busy and all of a sudden you realize you haven't been in 2 weeks and you're like, oh shoot, I got to get back.
That's me
my
right
body
now.
needs it. Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, I got to plan my calendar better. I'll get there. Okay. Tell me.
You can work out of there too. That's the fun thing too.
Exactly.
I'll go and I'll do my IV drip or I'll do hyperbaric and I'll just sit there on the computer and get calls done and work done.
That's great. You're right. That's a good tip. Okay. Anybody needs extra productivity, time and space, you can go to Restore any location, but it's
the new coffee shop.
Is West 37th Street? Is that the address to your new one?
Yeah.
It's in the triangle.
To my studio as a franchisee. It's 47th and Lamar.
47.
Just north of UT campus.
Yes. And it's close to my son's school also. So perfect for pickups and drop-offs. Yeah. Okay. So 3 years in, what do you think is your biggest win?
Oh gosh, my biggest win. I think this last year, we are finally being recognized as a national brand.
Yeah.
And it's something that I knew was possible, that certainly our co-founders knew was, eventually we were going to get there. But, unlike an e-commerce or online business where you're global the day that you launch your website, we had the constraint of retail growth. So when you're a 50 studio business, you're a 100 studio business, and you're in, 20 states, 30 states, you're not really a national brand.
Yeah.
And I think, the two combined, wins there is we kind of hit this inflection point last year where we surpassed 150 studios, and we were virtually in every major market except for San Francisco. So, every major market could access us now. And we launched our brand with a new website, our first national advertising campaign, our first ambassador partnership with Tim and Demi Tebow. Mm-hmm. We did what we call our annual hyper wellness report, where we did a consumer survey around their kind of understanding and awareness related to the modalities that we offer, and then how they would prioritize that in their budgets and their willingness to try it. And then in Q4, we launched our first influencer program. So we kind of brought on 26 influencers, each of them representing one of our 5 personas that came in and started using these services. So we had this really kind of, year-long integrated launch around the brand as we were finally getting to the retail number that we needed to really be a national brand. And so it's nice now I'll be wearing my Restore t-shirt, at the airport or something, and someone will
people know,
stop me and they kind of point and things like that. And so there's this great kind of acknowledgement that we're finally getting.
Yeah, that's got to feel really good.
Yeah.
And a lot of vision and guts, I would guess, that the CEO had hiring a new CMO right when, well, I guess you didn't know COVID was going to happen 2 weeks later, but still, it's like that timing is kind of uncanny, honestly. And then talk to us about building out a retail business literally in the midst of COVID. I mean, you joined 2 weeks before COVID started.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. That was
what did you do?
That was an oblique moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so our co-founder and CEO for the first 8 years of the company was a former brand marketer. He worked at Coca-Cola and Kraft, and
that's awesome.
As a brand marketer at Citibank and things like that. And so before he really started his entrepreneurial career for the last 20 some years, and so he's always had a heart for marketing. And as they were kind of reaching this new inflection point in their business where they were looking to scale, they'd kind of proven the core business model, and now they were looking at how they were going to scale the business. The first executive hire was a CMO, and I ended up being that person. And so I felt great about partnering with a founder and a CEO who was marketing driven, marketing oriented, and was going to prioritize that in the business. Building a retail brand in COVID was definitely interesting. My first, call it 2 to 3 months, were really focused on helping Restore be considered an essential business around the country where we were operating.
So that you could stay open.
So that we could stay open. Because like every retail concept, we saw foot traffic into our studios drop in half or more overnight. But probably by the second week of April, we started to see some foot traffic returning, and it kind of returned probably to like double digits every week until early June. We kind of got back to pre-COVID numbers, and then June of 2020 ended up being a record month.
That's fast.
It was very fast. And then we haven't really looked back since. And so what we found was our clients were super grateful for us to stay open. We have a lot of immunocompromised clients. People would look at what we do, and oftentimes they think it's for athletes and these biohackers.
Yes.
But that's less than 25% of our consumers.
Yeah.
A lot of people that come in have some type of chronic illness, autoimmune disease, things like that, rheumatoid arthritis or MS or fibromyalgia, these things where they're dealing with chronic pain, and things like red light and cryo and hyperbaric all help with these things. And IV drips help with those symptoms as well. And so they were really, happy for us to stay open so that they could do their best to kind of defend their bodies.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, goodness,
Yeah.
I'm just a mom and a CMO, and I just feel like I need it because I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm just tired. So I need that. But I had back surgery when I was little, so I can feel a difference too when I go and I have the holistic services. And then when I don't for a couple of weeks, it's like really significant for me, the difference. So I appreciate also that you found a way to stay open, stay resilient, because people need holistic care. And what have you observed over the last 3 years about the general trend around wellness becoming more mainstream too. Like, what do you think is the biggest driver of that?
Yeah, I think by and large, people feel like their needs have not been met by the traditional healthcare system. And then at the same time, it's costing them more and more. So this was a trend that our founders and then me kind of saw before COVID, was just this trend towards people want to have more control and better understanding of their health.
Yes.
It's a kind of a weird analogy to say, but I think that social media consumerized technology, right? Before that, people kind of didn't really engage in technology in a way where they understood it if you weren't like a developer or a product person. In the same way with healthcare, if you weren't a doctor or some type of provider, you kind of didn't really know what to do about your health. And now over the last decade or so, we've started to see consumers educating themselves more online through patient groups and things like that. And they're trying to be advocates for their healthcare. For me personally, when I was agency side, I was at an agency that's now known as Real Chemistry. We did a lot of work in the healthcare space, and I worked with a lot of pharma and biotech companies. And every once in a while you get to work on something really meaningful, like, a new drug that's coming out for a rare disease that, people are really struggling with. But sometimes you're also launching the 5th best rheumatoid arthritis drug or whatever it is. And I think that the challenge that I felt in that kind of period of my career was it felt like we were always just trying to solve for the symptoms. We're trying to treat the symptoms and not the core issue.
Yeah.
Why did this person develop a disease in the first place? So I kind of promised myself that if I ever got back in the health space, I would try to do that, in the preventative space. Yeah. And so when I did my own research around what Restore offers and the modalities that it offers, I, fell in love, not only just fell in love with the retail concept of it, but just loved the idea that we could help people be more proactive and preventative about their health. And so kind of back to your original question, I think that trend started before COVID. I think COVID absolutely accelerated it and proved that you need to take control of your health and can't wait till you're going to get sick.
Yeah, totally agree. How did you get into, even when you were working in the agency, you worked in this category. How did something happen in your life, or what's made you gravitate towards this category?
I actually resisted it.
You did?
Yeah. So
like me with finance, and I just kept finding my way into finance roles.
Yeah. Healthcare was too complex for me.
Yeah.
Especially when I was young, it was like, I'm healthy. I didn't really think about it or care about it. And my wife actually started her career as a pharmaceutical rep. So she'd come home and she'd start telling me all the geeky stuff. And I was like, please don't, I don't understand it. I don't want to try to understand it. I eventually landed at Real Chemistry.
Okay.
And, probably about 80% of their business was healthcare and 20% was tech and consumer brands. And I started in the tech and consumer brands space, and I was running accounts for Verizon and eventually moved into a role to start their strategy and planning group for the whole agency. And so now I had to play a global role at the agency. And that meant I had no choice but to start working with healthcare clients. And
sorry,
sorry. If you want to play, you got to play.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of how I got there. And I had a couple of medical directors on my team that were really great about helping to kind of simplify the science for me, so that then I could, create the consumer or patient or doctor stories around what these medicines were doing.
Okay, I got to ask you the question, which is, what's your superpower? It's my favorite question to ask. And I like to ask it at this point specifically because I get to listen to you for a while and figure out what I wonder it is.
Yeah.
And then see what you say.
All right.
So tell us, what is it, do you think?
So I think it is making the complex simple. I love big, meaty challenges. If you look at my career, I've tended to go across different industries. I haven't specialized in a specific industry. And it's because I like to take a really complex product or challenge and then try to simplify that down in a way you can build a business around and get consumers to become passionate about it.
I'd say you proved that with more than 10x growth of your retail operation during COVID,
Yeah,
Mr. Fossas.
Thank you.
That sounds like it to me.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into some of the ways in which you learn as a marketer so that our friends who are listening can gather all of your advice. Can you tell us who in marketing you most admire or learn from or listen to? Can be a couple people too.
Yeah. So the person in the story and case study that I always go back to first probably is a guy named Rob Malcolm. He was the Chief Marketing and Innovation Officer for Diageo.
Oh.
He came from Procter & Gamble. Yeah. He started Diageo at the end of the 90s. And he looked at the portfolio of Diageo brands and kind of saw Johnny Walker there and felt like that could be an iconic brand at the time. Not only was Johnny Walker losing market share, but all of Scotch was losing market share against other spirits like vodka and things like that. And so he was the CMO behind the Keep Walking campaign that became this global iconic campaign and made Johnny Walker synonymous with progress, which is pretty cool when you get to when a brand kind of goes beyond the definition of the actual kind of product itself and takes on a whole different meaning with consumers. And so I was getting my MBA at UT. This was over 10 years ago now, or about 10 years ago now. And he was a guest speaker and gave us that case study. And it was right when I had been marketing for a while, but I didn't consider myself a marketer yet because I started my career in the entertainment business.
Oh, wow. You're like a little onion.
Yeah.
Lots of layers.
Lots of layers. And so so I just, in that moment, I was like, well, that's what I want to do. If I ever have the opportunity to go transform a brand that way, then I'll be a pretty happy camper. Mm-hmm. So.
I love that story for a lot of reasons. One, because I first knew I wanted to be in marketing when I was in class 2. Mm-hmm. And I had that like light bulb moment and just like a rush of energy in my body. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do for sure. So I know what you mean. That moment feels so good. And then 2, because I think it is really cool when brands can come up with a way to emotionally connect that really is so elevated beyond their product. It's like not even funny. And to do that powerfully, relevantly, in a way that connects, in a way that stays for a while is like super impressive. So I love that. Yeah. What about books? Do you have any favorites?
Yeah. So one of the books that I've really enjoyed the last couple of years is And There Will Be Light. And it's the story of a man who had a terrible accident when he was about 8 years old, lost sight. And it was... and he was part of the kind of French resistance during World War II. And it's just one of those stories that whether you listen to it or read it, it puts your life into context.
Yeah.
And given what we've been dealing with in the world the last couple of years, it puts your life into context to say there's been harder times than this, and I've got it actually, pretty good. So it's such a positive book. His sentiment throughout that whole story that he had during World War II is just phenomenal. I love that book.
That sounds amazing. There Will Be Light.
And There Will Be Light.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like an important one to read and to share with my son who's 7.
Yeah.
Like, it's not so bad you can't have Robux today. We'll be okay. Don't worry.
That's right. Yeah. Get it on Audible and read it together.
Okay. That's a great suggestion. And what about guests for the show? Any friends that you think we should have on?
Yeah. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't recommend Mary Ellen Dugan.
Oh.
She was the person that gave me my shot to leave agency side and go brand side. She was the CMO for WP Engine, which is a platform for building websites.
Yeah.
And she gave me my first global brand opportunity. And she's been the CMO now for a couple years at a investment firm called Investment.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, I'd love to chat finance with another chick.
Yeah.
Given I kept finding my way in finance positions, just like you with wellness.
Yeah. She's another one that came from, I think she was at Landor. So she was doing, brand kind of consulting work and then went over to Dell and Indeed.
Oh, that's good. Austin's got a little community of those. I feel like there's a lot of little circles that are like, these are the Indeed people. These are the Dell people. I've been finding a lot of those on here lately. So.
Yeah.
It's been fun to uncover.
Yeah, I've been in Austin now for 11 years, and my concern in coming to Austin was I'm going to have to be on the agency side the whole time because there's no brands here.
Same.
And that's changed over the last 10 years. So it's fun to see these kind of emerging brands or even some global brands that are moving to Austin.
Yes, I agree. It's more fun.
Yeah.
Lots to do.
Lots
to do.
And a great community.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you so much for joining.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. And if you haven't been to Restore, please go. It's seriously so great. And I know we all want to be able to do more. Who doesn't? So head there if you haven't given it a shot. And if you do cryo for the first time, let us know your story because I'd just be really excited to hear it. If you're brave, go for it.
Yeah, take a picture, take a video and post it on social. It's a lot of fun to share that stuff.
How many, just before we wrap, how many locations do you have in Austin now?
In Austin, we have 9 locations.
9.
Yep. And then around the country, we've got over 200 now.
It's incredible.
We'll open another 60 or so this year.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Yeah.